Hello, this is the English language section of Free Radio Europe, a European voice in your home. Welcome from the seat of the European Parliament in Brussels. We are meeting you at a time of war, of huge challenges for the European Union. We've just voted some important legislation, and I have a very special guest today, a former Prime Minister of Belgium, one of the leaders of the Conference on the Future of Europe, Guy Verhofstadt. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
But in your youth, and you started in politics very early, you were known as Baby Thatcher, weren't you? So was I.
Yeah, that was.
But you wouldn't say that of yourself today, would you?
No, that was because I was Minister of Budget.
Right.
And so that was at a moment where Belgium got, I think, the highest, with Italy, the highest debt ratio. Right. With Italy.
So living within your means was a good Thatcherite
and so I said, yeah, we need to reduce that. And we did it. We succeeded to go from this more than 136% of GDP, so the public debt, and we went down then later on to nearly 80%. So that was a...
You were fighting actually the legacy of the 1970s and the stagflation, huh?
Yeah. And it was a disaster in Belgium because, like I said, together with Italy, we got the worst, the highest public debt expressed in GDP. So that was the reason why they gave me that name.
But you were also a good anti-communist, yeah?
Yeah, I went never in a communist country before 1989. Never. So the first thing what I did after the fall of the Berlin Wall was to do all the capitals of the countries. I started in Romania, in Bucharest, and then in Budapest, and so on and so on. So because as a liberal, it was not done to go to Eastern Europe. That's what the socialists were doing there.
Sure.
Not we.
What do you think Mrs. Thatcher would say to Boris today?
I think that she would have huge criticism. Certainly on the issue of going out of the European Union without staying in the single market.
But she was an English exceptionalist, okay?
Yeah, but she would have said, what is the interest of the British economy? The interest of the British economy is maybe to be, certainly not to go out of the single market. Because she said a few times that for her, the single market was the biggest achievement for Europe and for Britain. Because she said, look, there is one single market of more than 300 at that time, more than 300 million of customers at a few kilometers of London and Britain.
When I talked to her after she was Prime Minister, she advised us in Central Europe not to join the European Union, which I thought was not good advice.
No, because she went into the European Union. The only negative point maybe that you can say about Thatcher that she was also the leader, the European leader, who started to ask for money back. So give my money back. And that created a huge number of problems, I think, in the European Union, because that was the basis then to finance the Union based on national contributions instead of on own resources. And we are still struggling with that problem.
You were for enlargement against the Iraq war.
I was for enlargement against the Iraq war. I think the Iraq war, together with Germany and France, we were very much against, because based on the information I got, you remember Blix, the diplomat who was the UN diplomat who was scrutinizing what was happening in Iraq. He told me twice that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and it was a lie, in fact. And later on, yeah, I think that everybody can say that we were right to oppose the war, and it created a lot of problems. Still today, I think a lot of problems in the Middle East are coming from that mistake to enter
American intelligence has vindicated itself with their strategic warning of Ukraine and of allies over Putin's intentions, haven't they?
Yeah. I think that they do it in a completely different way than in the time of Iraq now, when you see to Ukraine. They open the information, they give the information, they are transparent, and that helps, I think, Ukraine, and that helps also the public opinion in Europe and the whole world to see what is really happening. So I think that's a huge step in the good direction. This transparency by intelligence services of the West, to open the information that they give, so that everybody can see who is lying and who is not.
And who gets it right.
And who gets it right. So it makes a huge difference, I think, certainly towards the public opinions in the West.
You are an unapologetic federalist. Is this just because Belgium is a federation, or is your message more global?
No, I think more global. I don't think that the world of tomorrow will be the world as we see it today. It will be a world, I think, of empires. I hope empires of the good and not of the bad.
The word empire implies
it's a difficult word.
coercion.
Yeah.
So it's not a good one.
No, that's the reason why I'm saying an empire of the good and not of the bad.
Right. But of blocks, yeah?
Blocks, that is what I mean. China is an empire, for sure, based on the civilization of Han. India is also an empire. There are 2,000 nations.
And until recently, India had internal customs barriers.
Exactly. And they have 20 languages, and they have 4 big religions, and so on and so on. So it's clearly that, yeah, the US is an empire, is a big bloc, and then Russia wants to be one. And I think the only way to defend our interest of all citizens is to integrate in the right way and to have the means and the instruments to really play a geopolitical role, including defense. So my main point is on defense today, because I think it's the biggest waste of money.
I'd like to get back to defense.
Yeah.
But what do you say to nationalists, including in Poland, who say, oh, we were joining the Europe of the patrie, of the fatherland, and not a federation?
Well, they have, in the world of today, that nations individually have lost their sovereignty. Sovereignty is the possibility to decide on their own fate, on their own direction, on their own future. And only together we can regain sovereignty. Take on internet, the digital world. It are the Americans and the Chinese who are calling the shots.
Actually, I believe that the European Parliament is humanity's only hope for regulating the internet in a sensible manner.
In a sensible manner, and to create a European model that is different from the big tech companies in America, and certainly from the Chinese Communist Party in...
But let's grant the nationalists this, that the further physically decisions are away from citizens, the less understandable they are.
Not necessary. Not necessary. It depends.
The Americans have the same problem with Washington.
Yeah, but not necessarily. It depends a lot of what we on the European level are doing, are explaining to the people. I chaired this conference on the future of Europe, and the common sense of citizens participating in this exercise was, look...
But they were somewhat self-elected.
No. These people were randomly selected, and what you see is that most of these people believe that our future, our common future, is Europe, but they are at the same time very critical towards the European Union. And the one call himself a Eurosceptic and the other call himself a Europhile. So there is more unity of view under the citizens than we think. They are very critical towards the European Union, but they believe in the European project as the project of the future. And I think for good reasons, because if you see, look what's happening now in the war. The only conclusion that you can have on this war in Ukraine is that a country is only secure when it makes part of a bigger bloc, when it makes part of NATO, when it makes part of the European Union. And if you are alone, certainly when you are in the neighborhood of Europe or in the neighborhood in any part of the world, you're not secure. You are under threat. So that is the main. So together we are stronger. Together we have security. Together we can make our defense more efficient than we do today.
You support the sanctions on Putin. You support Ukraine.
I want to increase them. I think that you are far too. So I think that we did a mistake to not launch the full sanctions immediately from day one. In the first week. And to do it gradually.
And also, we are now importing less oil and gas, but paying more for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is absurd.
So what happened is that by waiting 3 months for the oil embargo, and now even more months for the gas embargo, we give Putin the time to find new customers. And in the meanwhile, you see the rise of the prices. So at the end...
And he has the money for
He has the money, so he doesn't lose any money. And so certainly in a case of war and peace, if you want to take sanctions, you need to take them fully from day one. And secondly, also more individual sanctions, because I think that we didn't really attack the backbone of the Putin regime. The backbone of the Putin regime is more than 800 oligarchs. It's mainly 6,000 to 10,000 people. That can be a judge, that can be a general in the army.
The Navalny list, huh?
The Navalny list is 6,000. Other organizations even are talking about 10,000. And we need to tackle them. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to talk about...
You support candidate status for Ukraine?
Yeah, immediate candidate status.
Isn't there a danger that we have Ukraine as a candidate, possibly next decade a member, without NATO membership, Ukraine will be vulnerable?
Not at all, because you have, in fact, Article 42 of the treaty in Europe.
Provided Europe gets serious about defense until then. And I'm telling you, but I tell you, I don't have faith in it.
No.
I've been asking myself, including in the chamber, already last year, what disaster has to happen for Europe to take its security seriously?
The disaster is happening.
Of course. But do you see Europe getting serious?
Look,
I don't. Follow the money. Defense is very expensive. We are not spending real money on defense.
No, but that's not the main problem. Even when we would spend 2% of our GDP, it would not make any difference in Europe. You know, people need to know what the figures are. The Russians are spending, the Russian military budget is 65 billion. You know what the European budget is? 240. 4 times more. So don't give the impression that we spend 4 times more when I see what is happening.
And yet we don't have the ammo, huh?
We have 140 weapon systems. The Americans have 25 weapon systems. It's all about duplication. And also a lot of soldiers. You're the world champions in the number of soldiers, but not in efficiency. So we are spending, I'm always saying, more or less 35% of the Americans are military. We can only do 10% of the operations of the American army. So that means that you're 3 to 4 times less effective. No. And so even a lawyer like I can understand what the problem is.
But in this crisis, the United States has come through, and many European countries...
But it could be that tomorrow it will be another Trump and he will not come.
Exactly. But some European countries have really not come through on helping Ukraine.
Well, not enough in any way. So I agree with you. Fortunately, we used for the first time EPF, European Peace Facility, who was a new agency, a new facility, budget facility we created, and we used that money, European money, to buy weapons for Ukraine. But it's clear, we spent 240 billion, and that is only what we can achieve, what we are doing now for Ukraine. That's not serious enough.
And if America under Trump or someone else gets involved over Taiwan, we will be helpless.
Yeah, helpless, completely helpless. So I think that this European defense community, not against NATO, but as the European pillar of NATO, is a priority. Not to weaken NATO, no, it's the opposite. It will strengthen the North Atlantic Treaty Organization if we can stop the duplication inside Europe.
You know that my political grouping, EPP, has proposed that we have a defense commissioner, that we have a joint headquarters, and that we have this standing rapid reaction force. Do you support that?
I support the 3 points. Also, certainly the intervention force. The intervention force is now, there's an agreement for 5,000 people. That's not bad, but let's be honest.
It's a good beginning.
It
would be if it happens.
Yeah.
We promised ourselves 40,000 after the Balkan War.
I'm always comparing it with how many American soldiers were needed to evacuate in Kabul. Only on the airport of Kabul they needed 5,000 people. To tell you that 5,000 people doesn't mean anything. But okay, it's a start, it's a real start. While until now the so-called battle groups was only on paper and not the reality. But we need absolutely to do so, this defense community. Because like we said, it can be a day that we are totally alone and we need to call the shots ourselves.
But defense capabilities would be guided by political judgments.
Exactly.
By foreign policy. We pledged ourselves in the Lisbon Treaty to conduct our foreign policy in common. But we don't. Give me the example of one important issue on which the member states allow the institutions to be in the lead.
I agree with you, and moreover, it's also.
But it's the most important countries that are freelancing.
Yeah, exactly, and moreover, there is this problem of unanimity who kills every policy.
Over Ukraine, it turns out that France and Germany are essentially doing their own policy on Russia-Ukraine. If we give them double majority voting, then they just take Malta and Luxembourg, and then those two countries have an effective veto.
Yeah, but it's worse.
How do you go around that?
Well, because it's worse now. Now you, for example, on the oil embargo, to give an example, the Americans, after 2 weeks after the start of the war, I think it was the 8th of March, they announced with an executive order of President Biden an oil embargo. We need 3 months. It will take 6 months to implement it, and then we give an exception to Hungary. So that's not serious at all. So there is no effect of such a measure. So it's worse today. I think it would be better, even with some reluctance in the Council, but we could build up majorities in such a system. And now it's impossible to do so. And then the second time that Hungary used his veto about the patriarch who...
the man who said that the war was justified because we need to protect the people of Donbass from gay parades.
Exactly. And then the third time that they veto, it was then on the issue of a minimum taxation and so on. So every day we see why we have not a common migration policy, because of unanimity. Why we... The list is so long. Most of the files that are blocked in the European Union in these difficult times are blocked because of unanimity. We cannot, certainly if you are with more than 30, imagine that Moldavia and Ukraine and Georgia and the Western Balkans are all joining. Then we are with how many? 35? In 35. How do you do it in 35? And it's not that it is one country who is blocking. It's enough that there is one party in a coalition government who is blocking it. That happened with Greece, for example, when it was the true Finns in Finland who ultimately blocked...
Or a regional parliament in a member state.
Could also, for example, in Belgium could happen. So that makes no sense in the world of tomorrow. It's not a question of, oh, we will use our sovereignty on the country. We will regain sovereignty and efficiency.
Which of the proposed reforms that have come out of the Conference of Europe you regard as the most important?
I found that unanimity issue very important. And also the fact that we change a number of competences on 3 issues: health.
Europeans want a health union.
Secondly, energy union. There is no energy union. We said that there was one. I was there, I was Prime Minister, it was in 2006 in Hampton Court, and we decided, it was the last summit of Tony Blair, and then we said, we're going to do an energy union. And since we created the energy union, it became worse. We are more dependent on Russia than before the energy union.
Yeah, but when we were criticizing Nord Stream, EU institutions didn't exactly back us up.
No, absolutely not. Even when there were several voices, I was one of these voices. And I remember that the High Representative, after my intervention, came to me and said, oh, it's not very realistic what you are saying, it will never happen. And it happened because of the war. But you need a war for that. And that is my problem with Europe for the moment. People are saying, yeah, but Europe is born in crisis. When there is a crisis, we go forward. But there can be once a crisis that will be the end of the European Union. It's not true that the European Union is not vulnerable. We are vulnerable in the world of tomorrow. So we need to fix that. And then defense, I think, is my third element where we need to make steps in the right direction.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure.
I hope to work with you, to continue to work with you. Thank you.